Peace, y'all. What's going on? It's your girl Q, back with another video, and welcome to Quality Astrocartography. I am Q, the astrologist and astrocartographer, and just to give you guys a little bit of info about me and astrocartography, I've actually lived on 10 of these astrocartography lines throughout my adulthood. Visited and lived for about 6 months to a year. And in this video, I'm going to talk to you guys about my experience living on my Pluto Sextile Midheaven line, because this is the anniversary, the 2-year anniversary of me living on my Pluto Sextile Midheaven line. I moved here in 2022, and in my natal chart, let's just go ahead and get into it. We're diving right on in. I decided to move here because of my career. I've been modeling outside of astrology. I am a model. I've been modeling now for 14 or 15 years, and I moved here because I wanted to get back into modeling. So in 2021, I took a year off of modeling. I just kind of needed a breather and, get away from the pandemic and all that craziness and just kind of let my hair down. And I remember at the end of 2020 is the time when I cut all my hair off. Speaking of letting my hair down, cut all my hair off after taking a trip to Guadalajara, Mexico to do the toad. And I had a whole new massive subconscious awakening on a spiritual level, in the sense that I was holding on to perfection. And a lot of my ego was wrapped up in perfection. So after that is when I cut off all my hair, bleached it blonde, and then I decided to move to Mexico. And so in 2022, I moved back here to LA, and man, let me tell you something. It definitely has transformed my career. Now, Pluto in astrology has similar meanings to Pluto in astrocartography. However, the astrocartography meaning, in my professional opinion, is slightly more impactful. So we don't really want to look too much at the astrological meaning. We want to look at the astrocartography meaning of Pluto. And I'm going to refer to my notes here and there to tell you guys about it, as you see me look down from time to time. So let's talk a little bit about the Pluto line before we get into my Pluto sextile midheaven. So the Pluto line is an intense and powerful zone. It's where you're going to feel some intensity and a little bit of stress, depending on how your Pluto is aspected in your own natal chart, okay? But this is just a general adaptation of Pluto. So on the Pluto line, you are going to radically change and transform, okay, on a massive psychological level, because Pluto does rule Scorpio, the sign of Scorpio, and Scorpio is associated with the 8th house, as it is the 8th sign in the zodiac. And psychology, when I think about Pluto and Scorpio, I think about psychology, transforming the psyche, a whole death and rebirth process of the psychological mind, and how you think about death, and not even just like physical death, but emotional death and mental death, and the rebirthing process of those sectors of the mind, emotions, and the mental, and also the physical, how you are transforming these things into something that's more workable and more powerful, so that you can hone in the power of the Pluto planet, because Pluto is a powerful energy in astrology, all right? And particularly also in astrocartography, when you go to this particular line, it is a line, in my opinion, that you need to be careful with because of how it could be aspected in your natal chart, right? So anyone is apt to change here, and transforming is definitely something that is going to be on the cards for you on this line. And also too, what will end up happening on the Pluto line is an internal challenging of the self, meaning that if you're the type of person who sometimes would run away from challenges and stuff like that, you're not going to do that here. You're going to actually be propelled and compelled to challenge yourself, to not run away from the challenges and actually face the crises head on, all right? And there are some, painful experiences that can happen on the Pluto line, and, ones that are you know, it again, you're breaking it down and you're building it up again. You're breaking down the pain and you're going to transform it into like happiness and joy and glory. And it really is a death and rebirthing environment when you're living on your Pluto line. Also, too, with the Pluto line, if you're attached to your possessions and stuff like that, this zone really forces you to acknowledge the impermanence of your material reality, right? And that goes back to like Buddhist teachings. There are a lot of things in our lives that are impermanent, and we're so attached to it, therefore we suffer, right? When we have these desires about these material things, we suffer. But the Pluto line can definitely, if you guys are into Buddhism, I am. I've been like really studying it a lot lately, and I've really honed in on the teachings. This Pluto line can really help you to reprogram your subconscious mind so that you're not so attached to impermanent objects, the material realm, and all these things. It really just helps you just get out of that psychological loop. Now, Pluto for women, there's a possibility that you can relate to men who typify all the negative aspects of this zone with complete social alienation, cruelty, obsessive sexuality, and dominance. And honestly, this is something that I have experienced here on this line. This is why I do not date anymore on this line, okay? Now, because I am a Gemini moon, right? I'm flexible and adaptable. So although I know astrology and astrocartography, I am also someone who is not fearful. And, Gemini moons, I intellectualize my emotions. So I was intellectualizing the the energy that I would experience on the Pluto line in terms of my dating life with men. And I come to realize that it is true. This is not a good line to date at all. It is not a good line to have a relationship. Now, there are some caveats to that. So, if you live on your Pluto line, and because all of these astrocartography lines have long distance energy attached to them, and what I mean by that is if you're living on your Pluto line, and let's say your Venus line is in Las Vegas, and someone from Las Vegas, born and raised, comes to your Pluto line and is living there, and you happen to come across that person and meet them, there could be an opportunity for love to happen there because there's an intertwining energy between yourself and the person that comes from that Venus line. There is love there because they're coming from your Venus line, from your natal chart. However, when that person is in Pluto and you are dealing with Pluto energy, there's still gonna there's still gonna be some things that come up that resemble Pluto-like energy, like this feeling of social alienation and dominance and power and control issues and stuff like that. So you just have to be mindful because at the end of the day, that's what astrocartography teaches us, that our environment comes with different energies. Despite whatever type of person you come across, you're still if you're living on a particular line, you're still going to have to deal with that line's particular energy. So that's something that I've dealt with here. Dating is not okay here. And I stopped dating like a little while ago. And I'm even like, very celibate now as well. And I'm going to continue to stay that way until marriage. I've already made that decision. And I want to actually say that Pluto and the South Node transiting last year, the South Node was transiting in the sign of Scorpio, and I have Pluto in Scorpio. I'm a Pluto in Scorpio generation. So it did pass over my Pluto towards the end when it was about to retrograde into the sign of Libra. And that is, I believe, where I became more and more initiated into my celibacy journey. And all of the stages that you go through with celibacy, you know, of course you're going to be really, wanting to have sex and stuff like that. But once you like get through a couple of the stages, especially with that transit that happened over my Pluto, it really helped me transform my sex life, right? Pluto does rule sex as well. And Scorpio rules sex, and Pluto is the ruler of Scorpio. So definitely living here while Scorpio South Node was transiting my Pluto, my natal Pluto, definitely was a blessing in disguise, man. I'm telling you, because it really transformed my psyche when it came to how I viewed love and sex and relationship. Okay. Now, another thing about this line is there's a theme of social alienation. It's very prominent here, and the person can likely do a lot of things to isolate themselves from normal day to day activities, from social interaction, and there's a total inner transformation that occurs here that is kind of stimulated by the Pluto line. It demands isolation and awareness. And also, there's one more thing that I want to point out here too. Withdrawal from people and other unquestioned alliances can stimulate a energy of intensity and upsetting those people that you're withdrawing from, because what is happening on the Pluto line is that you are isolating yourself in the subconscious mind, and then therefore it's happening in your reality. And so whenever you withdraw from family or friends or people in positions of power, it can come off to them as if you are being rebellious. And that's what I mean by this underlying attitude that may come towards you from other people. It's not pleasant. You know, it's it doesn't it's not pleasant to feel that from other people, but if you are someone who is spiritual, you'll understand why you need to do that on your Pluto line. So I talked about that part. Now the other part, going back to, you'll probably feel isolated. You'll self-impose yourself to be isolated and isolate yourself from social interactions. And I would have to say that yes, this is something that I deal with here on my Pluto line. And because Pluto in my natal chart is positively aspected, there are no squares, there are no oppositions. There's only one conjunction to an inner planet. Yes, I isolate myself from people, but it is for my greater benefit. It is for the greater good of myself. It's for my benefit. And I have experience where people don't like that. They feel some kind of way about that. And I can tell, in their actions, whether it be like the most subtlest thing to the most grandiose type of action that they're taking towards me, I can tell that it makes them uncomfortable. But again, that's not my prerogative. I've come here to Pluto sextile midheaven, have a death and rebirth process to my career, to my public face out in the world. And we know that the midheaven is opposite of the IC, the fourth house, the inner world, right? And so because of that, there is a lot of me going on this line, Pluto sextile midheaven, opposite the inner world, where I do go into my inner world and transform there as well. It's very important for me to transform in my inner world in order to transform in my outer world, the midheaven. And there are certain things that I have to do that I'm called to by the divine to implement, and they have been working out. I managed to, really soar in my career in modeling. I've managed to work with like really big companies and get on commercials and work with blue check Instagram clients, and people wanting to work with me and reach out to me, and not even just clients, like my peers. I worked with and met a lot of really cool people, models, makeup artists, stylists, all those things, because literally Pluto also rules power, and the midheaven is your career. So I met a lot of powerful people on this line that have been able to help me transform my career and not be afraid and let things go that aren't working and implement more of the things that are working. Like, for example, when I lived in New York City, that's where my Neptune conjunct ascendant line is, and there's no Pluto energy there, right? And so with that particular location, I wasn't transforming my career. I was doing what was natural. Neptune rules film and photography. So yes, of course, I was modeling there and I had a, huge interest in modeling there. But I noticed that I was not being seen the way that I wanted to be seen. And that's because I was, relying on, you know, um, I guess my midheaven in Libra. I hadn't fully transformed it until I came out to the West Coast. And I realized that, once I started to transform things and transform, number one, my subconscious mind, and reprogram my subconscious mind with positive affirmations and, not feeding into the ideas about what I want to do with my life from my childhood, but throwing those things out that were negative and implementing and infusing more positivity into my subconscious and into my daily affirmations. That's when I started to see a change in my life. So that's that with that. Okay. So now let's go to Pluto midheaven. Like what exactly is that about? So on the Pluto midheaven line, okay, so the position of Pluto in this location will stress relationships with society and people in career and things of that nature. So yes, there can be some extremes of antisocial behavior that can come about. The identity may become popular. In my example, it's become popular because Pluto is sextile my midheaven, and Pluto in my chart is wonderful. It's gorgeously aspected, and it's in a house that also speaks to what I do for a living. So yeah, your identity may be popular. You have magical charisma, which I feel like I have had more of here. But here's the thing about this this particular line, that people in power can try to oppress you after you have provoked them by maybe challenging the system in some way. um, or you could be, very successful and praised. It just depends on how you do things. And even in my situation, I will say that I've never dealt with anything like that. I haven't felt oppressed. Thank God my midheaven is in the sign that it's in, and I am, my sun is in the sign that it's in. So I have charisma, and I'm able to deal with people in a way that is diplomatic and fair. And so because I deal with people that is, in a way that's diplomatic and fair, that's all that I've received in return. A lot of fairness, good things. Also, with this Pluto on the midheaven, your status in society changes constantly. And for me, it has been changing in a very, very good way. My status has changed constantly since 2 years ago. From 2 years ago, I modeled for Nike. 2022, and in 2022 I was like 4 months in, boom, Nike. And then 4 months after that, 3 or 4 months after that, 24-hour fitness. And then it just kept going on and on and on. Then Garmin that same year, 2022. Then it just kept going up and up and up. And this is the last thing I'm gonna say about this. And the only reason why is because I identified that if I wanted to have a prosperous career in modeling, I had to go to this line because Pluto is positively aspected in my natal chart. It didn't make any sense to go anywhere else, right? So, you really need to understand your chart. And again, if you want to reach out to me and grab a astrocartography reading, you sure can. Just send me an email. That information will be in the description box below, and I'll send you my rates and things of that nature while we're getting into February. And I'm actually going to be moving to another place, and so my set will be different. My studio, everything's going to be really, really different. So, and that's going to be coming up soon next month. But yeah, that's pretty much, I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say about my Pluto midheaven line. I'll talk briefly about the midheaven position as well. So midheaven in my chart is squaring a position in my chart and conjuncting another position in my chart. And so I have felt that energy as well, where, the square in astrology is basically an obstacle. It makes you feel like there's pressure to do something. You feel pressured to create some sort of change so you can get through the obstacle and get over the hurdle. But when I started to psychologically dissect the square aspect, because even though I am a teacher and an astrologist, I'm constantly, as a Gemini moon, thinking about these concepts in astrology. So particularly, I was thinking about the aspect of the square one day, and I broke it down where I found that the square is an illusion for you to want to act. It makes you feel like, you're blocked and there's no hope. But really, the square presents an illusion that there is a blockage. The square presents an illusion that you need to act. And therefore, because you feel that you need to act, you force yourself to act. And with the square, it can cause a lot of conflict and even more obstacles and delays, because really what the square needs you to do, the square aspect needs you to do, is let go, surrender. That's step number one. Step number two is create a more structured plan of action instead of, what's the word I'm looking for? Instead of impulsively acting, because the square aspect forces us to impulsively react to the stimuli, to the planets that it's being squared by. When really what you need to do is harness the energy of that planet that's being squared by the angle. Have patience, let go, create a plan, create a structured, disciplined plan, and then take step number three, take a structured action to carry out that plan. It's really that simple. So yes, my midheaven, I can't really think of an example off the top of my head of how I felt that square activated with Pluto, but I think honestly, I would have to say that square made itself present by the people external to me. I like to sit back and kind of wait on things a little bit more because, just kind of like make a structured plan and see how things are moving and working. Whereas I've found that people in my career have been a little bit more like a square, like the pressure to make me move, or the pressure to act or react or do something. And yeah, so it made me like take a couple steps back and just, not react and just kind of chill. And that's the best way to counteract the square when you're dealing with that. But that's another video in itself. But I just want to talk about real briefly how the midheaven did its thing with that square being there and the conjunction to one of my placements as well, right? But all in all, just a really good line to be on for me. Like I said, there's a lot of intensity daily, but at the same time, I've cried a lot of tears of joy here because I've really been able to really uncover my dreams and achieve my goals and see my dreams come true in my career. Although at the same time, I deal with very intense situations in my private life because that midheaven is opposite that I see. So that's one thing I got to deal with. Although Pluto is sextile in the midheaven, infusing all that harmonious energy into it, the opposition to my inner world. It's like Pluto, I want to continue to do my thing out in career, but then Pluto is like, opposing the inner world. And so there's a lot of like trivial things that happen in my private life. Nothing crazy where it's like violent or anything, but thank gosh, because I think the sextile helps out with that. But yeah, in conclusion, not a good place to date. Not a good place to date. And there's going to be intensity, and you just need to see how the Pluto is aspecting your chart if you want to move to your Pluto line. So that's it, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, if you want to book a reading with me, an astrocartography reading with me, all the information is down in the description box below. Just shoot me an email, and I'll send you my rates. So my email's in the description box. And that's it. I'll see you guys in the next astrocartography story. And you guys have a great one. Peace.